All right. So we're doing our small group discussions. I'm Tim.
I'm Max.
I'm Elena.
Anna.
All right. So we're going to be talking about work-life balance.
Yeah.
So I guess to start off, what do you guys all think about work-life balance?
I'll go real quick, I guess. Just like an obvious example would be, just being able to do the things that you want to do while, managing your work life, making sure you're putting enough energy in that as you are in yourself. And it makes me think of that one video of the guy like on the unicycle juggling axes and stuff. Like he had a point where the work-life balance isn't just like two extremes of managing both. It's just like little uneven chunks to kind of help, keep some sort of equilibrium.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I agree. That video seemed to point out the fact that like there are days where we may put more emphasis on work versus home life, or more emphasis on school versus work, and so like those odd chunks end up fitting together by the end of the week. So I thought that video was also very very cool in the way he put that into perspective.
Yeah, I think for me, work-life balance, I am really good about having like work-life balance for like the things that are right in front of me, or been a boarding school for the last 2 years, and so my work and my life was all in the same place. There was no real getting out of it, but I was okay with that because I liked the life part and I liked the community, but it was difficult to get that like and not be like looped in, and so I definitely see that pattern still going on where I'm still like encased in the work atmosphere, and I just kind of think that's part of my whole entire life. So.
Yeah, I think also for me personally, to be honest, if I were to reflect on work-life balance, I don't think I've really had a lot of it in the last four or 5 years. Once I started college, it was a lot of just school and work. Social life was usually, hopefully, on the weekends, but it wasn't like my other friends where, they could just pick and choose whenever they decided to have a social life or get to go home or whatever. So, but as also, that guy in the video, I forget his name, but he pointed out that like you get used to balancing the things that are in your life at that point, and then something else will get added in, and you'll learn how to balance that as well. So like for us, none of us have families, or we're not married or anything, so we don't necessarily need to balance other things in our lives right now. But when that time comes, hopefully we're disciplined enough to know how to juggle those things into the rest of our schedules.
Right. And I feel like in undergrad I had 2 roommates, but they both had like girlfriends and everything, so they were always over. So I had like 4 roommates, but I worked about 30 hours a week at my job to pay my bills and everything, and then we also had our clinical rotations. And I think living with people for me was they were able to kind of get me out of my like little like bubble or shell I'd put myself in, where we just put our head down and just work, go, and they're able to kind of like pull you out and let you have some fun, let you relax, get your mind off of things. And I've noticed a difference with that too. Where, if I'm like, I don't know, I just really appreciate my roommates kind of getting me out of that shell, kind of getting that other side of that balance, or whatever you could say, you could call it.
I don't even know if like to me, work-life balance is kind of like a myth. Like, I don't even, like, I don't know how to even explain what I just said. I feel like it's just kind of like making sure that you prioritize the things that need to get done, regardless of if it's work or school or within your personal life. So, like, for today, for example, the Marshall doesn't have school today for, well, I don't know why, but they don't have school. So they have practice starting at 12 p.m. Central Time. But then I also am supposed to travel for the away football game tonight. So I looked at the schedule, and that would make me be like at work, even if I didn't have like work to do, for like 13 to 14 hours. And I was like, that is redonkulous. So I kind of like looked at the schedule and looked at how I could like figure out how to not be at the high school for 14 hours or be with a bunch of high schoolers for 14 hours. And basically, like, you just have to kind of integrate, like, okay, pick and choose. The practice that starts at noon is volleyball, which is, like, obviously not a high-risk sport. And they don't expect me to be there for their practices. So basically, I prioritize, not going to work for 14 hours and just realize that that's not really realistic to, like, that shouldn't happen to anyone. So, like, I'm just not going to go to volleyball practice, and then I'm going to do stuff at home and do homework and whatever else. So it's just, like, stuff, like, where you have to kind of, like, pick and choose, like, what's really worth your time. Because I know a lot of people would be like, oh, volleyball practice, and not even think about it and just, like, show up and then be like, oh, my God, I worked for 14 hours today. And it's like, even if you were there for 14 hours, you weren't working for 14 hours.
Yeah.
And
You weren't using your time efficiently.
Yeah, so it's just like figure out what's actually worth your time and then go from there.
Well, and I get what you mean when you say it's a myth, because I think the reason why maybe you think that is because we tend to think of work-life balance as like this teeter-totter that has to be completely level. And when it's not level, then suddenly we don't have work-life balance anymore. And so that's the problem with, I get when you say it's a myth, because then when we think about it like that, then it is a myth, because like it's never going to be that equally balanced ever. So we just have to decide on priorities, just like you said.
I think what you said, Anna, is that I tend to just go with the flow, and I'm just like, oh, there's a practice. Okay, I'm going to be there. But I kind of also need to do the same thing as like really look at my schedule ahead of time and be like, what is really necessary? What do I need to actually help with? What I need to be there for? And then also educating the like stakeholders, coaches, and stuff, like setting up the system
Right.
be beneficial.
Right.
So that way they're not like, oh, the AT is never there. Like you hear that all the time. But it really you need to be able to set realistic expectations of when you need to be there.
Right.
Anna, I think your answer for that first question was a really good segue for the second question of like how you would define a work-life strategy in like one sentence. I think what you said was like perfect. And like the whole like saying like work-life balance, I think that creates a bigger kind of like blunder, and it kind of just like overcompensates for maybe what it really is. But yeah, what you said, Anna, was like spot on for that question.
So Max, what would you do you think that you're at your optimal life work balance level?
No. No. Because, well, I'm reading the question now. No, because I've talked to you about this, but so like we're on fall break right now, and I have a bye week for football, and so like yesterday they didn't have practice, but there was girls basketball that started, and I was like, okay, well, that practice is only going to be like an hour hour and a half maybe, and I was in this conundrum because it's gonna be like a 2-hour trip for me, and so it wasn't really worth my time. I didn't want to go, but yeah, I just had to talk about it, and yeah, I ended up not going because I mean they barely. I've only met the coach once, and I think they could, or they probably wouldn't need me.
Mhm.
And yeah, they didn't even know I was there until the coach met me. So
Right.
and they already had the practice yesterday morning. So and then today, like the team, they're not practicing, but they're leaving at like 3:00 to go watch somebody play. So there's no point of me going to. So kind of like what Tim was saying, I gotta just kind of look ahead and see what's worth my time, because it's just going to be 2 hours of driving for me to go out there. So yeah.
I think also like setting up communication is really good. Like I know that's one thing I need to work on with my school is like meeting other coaches, getting all their numbers, getting contact information. And then, so even if you were good to tell a coach or tell your AD, like, hey, since blah, blah, blah is happening, I don't think I need to be there. Obviously, if an emergency happens, call 911, or, you know, if there's CPR, it's also going to help you a lot, take some burden off of you if the coaches are CPR trained. But then also setting up like the next time that they can see you, but like saying, oh, but I'm going to be there tomorrow during your practice from blah, 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 blah. So they can, if it's just something minor, they can see me then, you know. Right. I think that can kind of help, you know, so they're not frustrated in the moment if something bad happens. If the coaches can handle it and go, okay, this is something minor. Let's have you see Tim, Max tomorrow at this time.
Right. Well, and that's just part of balance. Like, I think that we tend to think that we have to keep adding things in and then trying to make that work. But balance is also about taking things away. So it's okay to say no. I mean, obviously within reason, but it's definitely okay to say no. We have to get out of that mindset that we have to say yes to everything and then try to fit it all together.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's definitely something like that when I first graduated, I felt like intimidated that I needed to like listen to my AD and whatever. I needed to follow whatever they told me to do. But now kind of looking back on it, like I could have said no a bunch of more times. I just need to have a little more confidence and know what is realistic expectations rather than just going with whatever the AD said. So
right. And like the other thing for me too is like this is my first like job as an athletic trainer, so it's just like it's kind of just like testing out the waters and like seeing, you know, just trying to figure it out. I think is the big thing too.
Yeah. Yeah, and it comes with experience. Everything does. So, but how's Marshall, Anna? How's your life work balance there?
It's not too bad. Marshall as a whole is not a fun place, but when it comes to work-life balance, I don't think it's like totally unrealistic. Like most days I leave because of the time change. It also like it's kind of weird because I don't have to leave for work until like 2:30, but then I like get there at like 2:15.
Oh, okay. Dang, that's pretty cool.
It's pretty trippy.
Yeah.
But I mean, it kind of requires like late nights, but I have my whole morning, so like I can get up and I can work out and take care of my dog and do homework and whatever else I want to do. Right. And I don't feel like it's too much time spent at Marshall or anything like that. Like my hours for the most part are fine. I mean, there's late Friday nights, but I'm sure all of you guys have that with being at secondary school setting. And like overall, I don't feel like I have like a poor work-life balance or anything like that.
Good.
I think one thing I kind of realized, especially with the question like, are you at your optimal life-work balance? I always kind of imagined like getting to my optimal life-work balance would be like when I have a family. I didn't really think like in my current mindset, I wasn't like, oh, I need to like set realistic expectations now. But I think that's like a good thing for me to start practicing is setting expectations and talking with my other staff members, stakeholders about what is realistic and getting to that optimal life-work balance level.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't really know like what I would wish my current employer would do to help me. Max, what do we wish Craig would do?
Right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like the most difficult thing right now is the mindset of like asking for time off or being granted time off and stuff. Like, yeah, like when I think for me, like I don't need my idea of work-life balance isn't like an everyday situation where I feel like I have to plan out every day. It's more like a monthly thing. So like, I work hard, for a certain amount of time and then, a day or two worth of a break is good enough for me. Like that right now in my life situation, that is what work-life balance is to me because I don't have any other aspects like a family or other people to take care of or anything to worry about. So I don't mind working hard, but then it comes to me needing a break at the end of the month, and it's like, how do I get that, So that's like, I think that's a tricky thing maybe for us up here a little bit is dealing with, that kind of situation. I don't know if I'm putting words in your mouth, Max, but.
Well, yeah, I know like, I'm fine for a few months and everything and working hard and, I get it plenty of hours. And like, I don't feel burnout or anything like that. I'm kind of like you, Elena, where, I find a couple days, throughout the month or whatever to kind of just, not do anything or do something else.
Yeah.
Treat yourself kind of thing. But, there's the issue of, I try to get some time off for Thanksgiving. I think more than like a month before, or probably 2 months before. And like our supervisor just, I don't know, didn't really, I don't know, I couldn't remember the dates that I gave him. I gave him all the dates and everything, but there are some steps I missed through that, so I can't go home for Thanksgiving, it's fine. It's Thanksgiving. But like the other issue for me is that like my family lives on the West Coast. So like that's going to be, I'm going to go, and then I'm going to be gone for a little bit. So that's a tough thing for me. But I mean, as long as I can get a couple days, then a month, I'll be okay.
Yeah.
I think going off that too, for me, one of the reasons why I accepted the GA position was because I thought that I had during the breaks, during when school was in session, I wasn't in session. Right? I wasn't working. So I was like, oh, cool, I can do the other things I want to do. I can pick up volunteer work with other groups or whatever. I can go home. And then my first meeting with Craig, he was like, so the expectation is that when, when school is in session, when things are going on, you're here. I'm like, whoa, that's not what I signed up for. So
yeah, it's the same. Like, I mean, I'm all good for working in the summer and everything, but there's, I wanna go home. I wanna have a decent summer. But,
yeah.
And are you getting paid PRN for that?
yeah.
Oh. Right.
But like I know we're adults and we have jobs and everything now, and we gotta be professional and like that. But
Yeah. Well, I just think it's overwhelming because for all of us, this is new. So, well, maybe not for you, Tim, but like for the rest of us, we're like, oh my God. So like, you know, if ISU's in session, obviously we're doing school. ISU's off, we still have our high schools. If our high schools, you know, aren't off or are off versus ISU, it's like there's so many things that we have to look at before we actually like, all right, so when can I like take a break? Yeah. And it's either like you're doing something, school or work or whatever. So but yeah.
You know, that's what we kind of need. It's good to have Dr. Games and Dr. E are there for to help us navigate that and support our roles and support expectations. So I think that's one thing I kind of want to do is be like, talk to them and be like, so this is what I thought. This is what Craig is telling me the expectations are. And then helping them help me navigate the system and how to talk to Craig about setting realistic expectations.
Right. And that's, I mean, that's like the next question asked about how you would encourage your team members to practice healthy life-work balance. I think you just said it, like setting expectations, you know, even just literally, if you don't have expectations, just sit down and have the conversation about like, hey, what do you consider work-life balance? When are appropriate breaks for you? Like, even if you don't agree, just laying it all out on the table, just so that you understand each other. And then you can start working on setting expectations. But when nobody says anything, and then next thing you know, we're all like tired and frazzled out and we expect a break and we don't get one. And then like the whole world turns upside down and like when things get too tense.
Mm-hmm. So. Right. I think it's definitely something that I've noticed is there's a big difference from when you say something multiple times or you set expectations, whereas or something comes up in the moment.
Right.
So, like if, let's say you're trying to get this weekend off, and there's just like a tennis match, you know, if you set the expectations ahead of time, or if you've had multiple types of these conversations, it's a lot easier to kind of convince stakeholders on what realistic expectations are. But if all of a sudden you come out of the blue and you're like, hey, I don't think I need to cover this tennis match, then it's harder to convince on what is realistic.
Right. Yep.
It's definitely not a skill that most people know. It's kind of something that comes with experience.
A lot of it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and making yourself comfortable too. I mean, it's hard to, you know, waltz into a new job and then just be like, all right, these are my expectations. Like, that's not how you build the relationship anyways with your employer or whatever, or your colleagues. That's not the appropriate way to do it. So sometimes it is a little giving before you can take. So you have to remember that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the important thing too to remember is that not your employer, all these people, even if they're in a leadership position, they may not have great leadership skills. So that's like one thing I've definitely experienced over the last couple of years is like, I'm like, you know, I'm having these meetings with my leaders and I'm like, oh, they're just not doing this properly. Like they're saying inappropriate things. They're not being empathetic. And so you kind of need to realize that sometimes you in yourself need to help them improve their leadership skills and setting realistic expectations for yourself and for everyone else.
Right. It's true. Yeah.
I do like the question about when you are a leader of other athletic trainers, how will you encourage your team members to practice healthy life-work balance? What are you guys' thoughts on that?
Well, my thought was with what you said, Tim, is setting those expectations, having those conversations. Yeah, I think that's very important. And it's something that we're not necessarily taught in school, that we're allowed to take that leadership position and go ahead and start those conversations. I think a lot of times, at least I know that I waltzed into my job employment with this idea that I was there to serve everyone. And then, you know, like, it's okay for me to like say what my expectations are as well, in a nice way, in a formal way, but still it's okay to do that.
Yeah. When I think of that, like I just picture myself as like the head athletic trainer of someplace, and I like my head automatically goes to, okay, well, just tell me like a couple months in advance when you're gonna go do stuff. But then in my head, I'm like, oh, I get mad when people tell me that because like I don't even know what I'll be doing in like a couple months or something like that. But I think as I think the more lines of what kind of Elena said, just having those conversations, setting those expectations, but also like if I were the leader, like I want to make sure like no one's trying to like bully me and kind of not almost like swindle me and kind of like take advantage of like, oh, okay, well they can be super nice to me and be fake about it just to get like a couple weeks off or something like that. Like I think it's important to have a really good relationship and everything with your employees and having those conversations, but also being reasonable and not letting them kind of walk over you, if that makes sense.
What are your thoughts, Anna?
I think, I don't know, it's kind of like a trippy question to me. I don't know, because it's like, I feel like for logistics wise, kind of what Max said, like you'd want to know like a month in advance or more, because like it's like, okay, well I'd want to know like how to get it covered or like how to move people around or XYZ. But then it's like, unless it's something that's like relatively big, like a wedding or a vacation, like a long-term vacation or something like that, like you don't know even sometimes a month in advance. Sometimes it's just like this weekend somebody invited me to go to their cabin in Michigan, I don't know, and something like that where it's like, okay, well I'd really like to do this. I've been struggling with, even sometimes I think work-life balance to me involves like mental health, because I feel like sometimes it's just like you just mentally need a break, and it's not always like work's fault that you mentally need a break, but like you just need to kind of get away from everything that is life. And so it's like part of that work-life balance is like being able to take care of yourself and take care of your mental health. And so I feel like as a leader, I'd want to set a precedence that like I prefer, like if you can tell me a month in advance, otherwise I'd need at least like a week's notice kind of thing, just because like sometimes even just 1 week would be plenty to figure out logistics, if like it comes down to being like a mental health, like you just need, even if you don't have like something diagnosed, it's just kind of like sometimes you just need to like be there for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
I had something like that happen my last semester in undergrad, where I just freaked out for like a few days, and my preceptor was just like, dude, like like I worked in a clinic, so like I had like a lot of patients that like I couldn't just leave, so they had to pick up my baggage there, I guess. But like my preceptor, I guess my boss, like she was very empathetic. She like if you can just if someone's like actually struggling and they come to you and they're vulnerable with you and they tell you what's going on, and if you can be empathetic and and help them like get through whatever they're going through, I think that goes a long way, and I hope set that precedent. But like, yeah, I agree with what you said, Anna. I think, if something does pop up or, let me know as soon as possible, because like life happens, like stuff happens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But then again, you want to have that comfort of, looking at the yearly schedule and, rearranging things,
Right.
people around.
I think one thing that's kind of important to realize as a leader of athletic trainers or any position is to have a backup plan for all of your employees and have a system set up so they could swap out. Because especially like if you're a parent, if your employee is a parent and their kid gets sick or the kid gets in trouble in school or something happens, like that's something that's not planned and it's not their fault. But having a plan ahead of time really helps you be more flexible. So I think that's one thing that would be really helpful. And I think that's one thing that's helpful for us as employees to talk to our employers about is like, what's your backup plan? Like if I'm not there, what's your plan? Because that happened to me. I dislocated my ankle in January and I was out for a month, right? And so my employer, they scrambled and they got another athletic trainer there. But if I kind of talked to them ahead of time and be like, so what's our backup plan if I go on some sort of disability or if I get hurt? Like what's the plan? So coming from both sides, both as the leader and as the employee, saying like, what's the backup plan if I can't be there, helps a lot.
Right. And to build off that real quick, Tim, I also think that checkups are also very important. Like you can wait for them to come to you in the emergency situation or in just the regular situation where they ask for time off. But also if you regularly check up on your colleagues or your employees, sometimes you can foresee situations coming along before they might foresee them themselves. So and this comes with good relationships as well. If you have a good relationship and you have that checkup appointment where you just are personable and you talk about what's going on in their lives, then maybe you're like, hey, I can see that you're really been struggling these past couple weeks, and then you foresee their future schedules and maybe like, hey, why don't you take off, like next Friday or something, just have a day for yourself. Like that's, within reason, but like that's also something that you can maybe prevent those kind of stressful situations and planning from happening if you are, a good colleague or a good boss or whatever.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely help establish trust and make them feel comfortable with you approaching you, and you recognizing them as human beings that have needs.
Yeah.
It's definitely something of value.
Yeah. So.
Well, we got less than a minute here, so any other questions you want to hit on real quick, or do we feel good? I feel good about this. I think it's a really good discussion.
It was a good conversation, guys.
Yeah, I think everyone kind of made some good points. I definitely learned a lot from everybody. So.
All right. See you guys later, I guess.
Hasta luego.